Hello, everyone, and welcome to Business Incorporated here on Channels Television, and it's great to have you at this time. I am Bosin Amafai. I'm sitting in today for Chimezie Obiwagu. On today's show, the two of the world's most powerful women visited Nigeria and other African countries to discuss trade ties and investments. Meanwhile, the United States is planning a $4.7 billion aid to farmers to offset losses from trade dispute between U.S. and China, as well as Mexico. And Nigeria's Sterling Bank has announced a new debt offering. Now let's get the show started right from the markets. As always, here on the African continent, the Nigerian stock market is trading positive intraday about 0.1%. The South African GSE was also up about 0.5% about an hour ago, while the market in Egypt was trouncing the rest of the continent, a whopping 2.52% at about midday Nigerian time. Meantime, the Kenyan market, was the Nairobi Securities Exchange, was down about 1% when the week started on Monday. Cross over to the Middle East with us and see how it was all green for most of the markets intraday Tuesday, except Dubai, which faltered about 0.41%. The Abu Dhabi market was up about 0.36%, and Qatar stock index gained about 0.5%. The markets in Saudi Arabia was positive 0.22%. Also at intraday, the markets in that region were back from a very long Muslim holiday on Sunday. We're stepping into the European markets slightly higher on Tuesday morning, with risk appetite sharpened by the news that the U.S. and its closest neighbor to the south, Mexico, has reached a deal to overhaul the North American Free Trade Agreement called NAFTA, by whatever name is going to be called, according to President Trump. For this and more, let's talk to Paul Christian Breeze, my colleague at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. He'll be joining us. We'll look to have him on the program to take us through the trade wars and what the warming up will be. On one hand, U.S. is warming up to Mexico, while President Trump says the deal, trade talk with China, will take a bit more time. Let's go to what it's looking like. We're ahead of Wall Street opening. We're about an hour away from the opening bell on Wall Street, the second trading day. What's the world's largest market looking like as far as the stocks index are fluctuating ahead of the open at 2:30 Nigerian time, leaving major indices poised to open near records today after the U.S.-Mexico agreement eased trade worries between the two countries. The Dow futures rose about 20 basis points, with the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq futures pointing to a flat to upbeat start of the day. And you can see the numbers there are still about an hour to that May 2nd trading day. Monday was a positive day on Wall Street, and today is likely to be on track. Let's go to Asia, where it's already about 7 p.m. already in Tokyo. The markets in Asia were broadly higher Tuesday afternoon, following yet another day of record highs on Wall Street as U.S. and Mexico go for a handshake, announcing a new trade agreement, which will be called by a new name. The Nikkei 225, that's the biggest basket of the Japanese stocks, ended the day largely flat, finishing 22,813.4 on the index counter. The South Korea's Kospi index finished in positive territory, about 0.2% at 2,033. Then you have the ASX 200, that's the Australian Stock Exchange index, up by about 0.57% to close the day at 6,304. The market there continued its recovery from last week's political turmoil. Look at the greater China market. The Hang Seng index lost some of its earlier gains, but still traded up by 0.26%. Look at the mainland China. The composite, the Shanghai composite, ended today by 0.1%, about 0.1% at 2,777.9, while the Shenzhen composite closed largely flat around 1,497. Quite a very mixed day, but largely positive in Asia, taking their cue from Wall Street on a Monday. Let's get a sense of the world of commodities right now. Let's add commodities to the conversation around the world of stocks and bonds. But of course, the big story was that Nigeria has now signed on the instrument of accession to the International Cocoa Agreement 2010. That agreement was expected to, among others, strengthen cooperation between exporting and importing countries and improve their cocoa economies through active and better focused project development and strategies for capacity building. What does this really mean for Nigeria and the international cocoa market? Nigeria is the third largest cocoa producer, coming after Ivory Coast and Ghana. Let's get some answers to some of these questions from research analyst at Financial Derivatives Company. Mukhtar Juma is joining us from downtown Lagos from FDC. Thank you, Mukhtar. It's good to have you on the program at this time.
Thank you for having me, Bosun.
Yeah, cocoa used to be Nigeria's #1 export in the years leading up to independence before the discovery of crude oil in 1958 in Oloibiri. What are the implications of this new agreement on the international cocoa market, looking at our two biggest neighbors when it comes to cocoa, with Ivory Coast on one hand, then Ghana on the other hand?
Yes, Bosun. The agreement, like you said earlier on, the signing of agreement is expected to improve the cooperations between cocoa exporting countries and cocoa importing countries, and particularly seeks to increase the measures. Like for instance, we have high quality yields. Is expected to boost the use of cocoa farmers. And particularly when it comes to, over the years there has been incidences of use of child labor in the cocoa industry. That agreement is expected to address this. So it sets an ethical standard and environmental sustainability standard that cocoa exporting countries, they are required to meet this standard. So once they meet this standard, it's supposed to improve the sustainability of earnings in the cocoa industry.
Yes, but who is setting these standards, by the way? Is it the producers or those who are the cocoa importing countries in Switzerland, in Britain, and elsewhere, where cocoa is a major input for the chocolate industry?
It is being said by the United Nations Conference for Cocoa Industry. It is so different a coalition of cocoa exporting countries such as Nigeria, Cameroon, and so on, Ghana and Ivory Coast have already signed this agreement, and this would improve the viability as well as ethical standard in this industry.
But take a look at two neighbors I mentioned earlier, Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. They're getting support, about $600 million from the EFDB, with headquarters in Abidjan, to tackle disease, cocoa pod disease, and age stock of cocoa in that sector. How would this affect the global cocoa market?
Yes, the sentiment in the global cocoa market currently is positive, and that has been supported by challenges in the major cocoa exporting countries, like you said, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Nigeria. For example, Ghana's about 40% of Ghana's cocoa crops is being affected by diseases, and Ivory Coast is currently constrained by illiquidity in the cocoa industry. And the illiquidity in the cocoa industry emanates from the fact that from the sharp drop in the prices of cocoa in 2017 and 2016. And Nigeria, the gridlock in Apapa is obvious for everybody to see, has been constraining Nigeria's export. So what this $600 million will be used for is to boost liquidity in Ivory Coast industry, as well as finance the replanting of cocoa in Ghana. But let's not we shouldn't be too happy over these figures, because this is just about 50% of the initial request by these countries. And furthermore, when you look at, there's a time lag between cocoa planting and harvesting, and on the average, it takes about 5 years for cocoa pods to mature. So in the short run, we do not expect a significant change in the prices of cocoa. But on a longer term, when this new crop begins to mature, we might see a downward pressure in price because output is going to be increased.
Mokhtar Jimoh from Financial Derivatives Company, thank you very much for your time. Bringing us the big cocoa story and adding that to chocolate from Financial Derivatives. Hope you have a very nice day there.